Hello, my name is Catherine Martinez, and in this theoretical video, today's topic is research design. More specifically, focus on the quantitative method. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you and explain the topic of my research, that is language anxiety. To start with the information, let's discuss a little about the theoretical background to better understand the terms and meaning of the information we are going to see. What is the quantitative method, its principal characteristics, what are the type of research. Those are the principal topics that we are going to discuss during the video, and all of that with the support of 3 books that I'm going to show you during the presentation. The first book is Research Methods in Applied Linguistics by Sultan Dorje. First of all, we have to remember that every scientific work have to follow a specific method, that is the scientific method. This is composed by 3 stages. The first one, as you can see, is observing a phenomenon or identifying a problem. The topic, we can see that is the topic of our study, what we want to develop, maybe a phenomenon or maybe a problem. It depends on the research. The second step is generating an initial hypothesis. Now that we have the phenomenon or the problem of our interest, we have to create a hypothesis. And then is testing the hypothesis by collecting and analyzing empirical data using standardized procedures. It is not complete if we only does the hypothesis. We have to prove that our hypothesis is right or it is wrong. So we have to prove it through a specific system using an instrument and getting results to get a conclusion. Sir Francis Galton, a polymath, was significantly important in the area of research because he established quantitative data collection and analytical methods in psychology. At the turn of 20th century, he initiated psychological testing, introduced the use of questionnaires, and created statistical concepts of regression and correlation. All of that gave an opportunity to the quantitative method to growth. Now let's start with quantitative research. What are its main characteristics? First, we have numbers. This is the most important feature of quantitative research because, well, that is a way we can know that we are maybe reading a quantitative research instead of a qualitative research. A qualitative research focuses on opinions. I can say that in opinions. The instruments for qualitative research are, for example, observing. And in quantitative research, there are different types of instruments in which numbers are extremely necessary. Let's check what are the characteristics of numbers. First, we have opens up a range of possibilities and sets some limitations. There are many things that we can measure, but all of those topics that we can measure, we can use it in the quantitative research. Then we have contextual backing. We have to describe, we have to give a meaning to the numbers, because without that, numbers are meaningless. We have to specify exactly the category that we use to specify number 4, and also the different values within the variable. And then we have precise definitions of the content and the boundaries of the variables. Okay, the second characteristic of quantitative research is a priori categorization. As we can see, specify the categories and values needs to be done prior to the actual study. We have to develop our study through the time, maybe several weeks or months. We have to prepare our work, and in that way we can have a clear idea about our topic. So it is necessary to give a time to develop our ideas. Then we have variables rather than cases. As we can see, the study of variables that capture common features in groups. With this kind of research, we can easily recognize those common features in a specific groups of people. And after we recollect that information, we can quantify it by counting the scaling or by assigning values to categorical data. But what is the purpose? Well, the purpose is to identify the relationship between variables by measuring them and even manipulating them. Another very important characteristic of quantitative research is statistics and the language of statistics, because as I mentioned, numbers is one of those important characteristics, and we can range the numbers through statistics. Let's read. Calculating the average mean in statistics of several figures on a pocket calculator to running complete multivariate analysis on a computer. With statistics, we can manage that information, even if it is few or if it is even complex. We can do it with the statistics. One of the objectives of quantitative research is to be objective, and eliminating any individual-based subjectivity is a way to make the research more objective. The quantitative research aims to delay the prejudice the personal prejudice, to make the study more scientific, following the, the structure I mentioned at the beginning. And that is why, because our personal opinion is not a good and reliable source. And last but not least, quest for generalizability and universal laws. Numbers, variables, standardized procedures, statistics, and scientific reasoning are all part of the ultimate quantitative quest for facts that generalizable beyond the particular and add up to wide-ranging, ideally universal laws. Now the strengths and weaknesses of the quantitative research. First, the positive, the positive part. It is systematic. We can follow a specific procedure. It is rigorous. We can change that procedure. We can add steps or eliminating steps. We have to follow that procedure. It is focused because it has a specific objective. This kind of research always will have the objective very clear, and that is a good characteristic. It is tightly controlled. As I said, we have to follow a specific procedure, and involving precise measurement and producing reliable and replicable data. All the information that we are going to use in this kind of research have to be official, have to be scientific information. And then we have the negative part. It is rather limited. I already mentioned that in one of the characteristics. It is limited because we have to use topics that are good for measurement, that we can measure with numbers. Then another characteristic is overly simplistic. We can be kind of creating, adding steps. It has to be the same procedure, so it is simply reductionist in terms of its generalizations. It is precise and sometimes reductionist to generalize, and failing to capture the meanings that actors attach to their lives and circumstances. This is a clear difference from the qualitative research. In that research, we can work with opinions, with what people believe or think, and in this kind of research that is not acceptable. So we can capture that meaning in this kind of research. That was all for the first book, and then we have this book that is Methods in Educational Research from Theory to Practice by Catherine H. Botley. Margaret G. Lurico, and Dean T. Spaulding. From this book, we are going to discuss the types of research. The first one is descriptive survey research. What is this? How is this research? Well, we have few examples. Clipboard full of questions, when someone calls you on the phone, or when someone sends you a paper survey in the mail or by email. Those are examples of descriptive survey research. And why those are examples? Well, because in this kind of research we measure people's opinion. The purpose, as you can see, is gathering opinions, beliefs, or perceptions. Just remember that the questions are not open. The questions are closed, so we can measure the answers. And some characteristics of this kind of research are pre-establishment instrument, that is, survey. Most quantitative responses. This is a type of research we can use with qualitative, but most frequently quantitative. And samples selected from large population or group. We can use this kind of research with a group of people, with a specific group of people, and that help us to have a specific information. Then we have experimental research. In this kind of research, the researchers controls or manipulates how groups of participants are treated and then measures how the treatment affects each group. This is a good type of research for those topics that have to check the difference from a time to another time, applying something. Let's check that with the example. But first, we have to have clear our variables. The independent variable is how participants are treated, and the dependent variable is the outcome of the study. We are going to understand that with the table below. In this kind of research, we have two groups composed by the same type of people, but one group is going to be called experimental or treatment group, and the other one is going to be called control or comparison group. The difference here will be the independent variable. The experimental or treatment group is going to be manipulated with the independent variable. And the other group, that is the control or comparison, is going to be normal. So we can compare the difference between both. And if there is a difference in the experimental or treatment group, for example, the independent variable here is team activities for the experimental and individual activities for the control group. I mean, The students are going to be working in groups in the experimental group and working alone in the control group. And to know if the topic's understanding and learning is better, maybe in the team activities or working alone. That is going to be measured by those activities. And I think it's a good example because we can have the hypothesis that team groups are good for the student because they can discuss between them and better understand the topic, because one student can have an idea and another one another idea and create a complete idea, something that can be possible in the individual activity, because if someone didn't understand the topic, he can understood well, he can talk to another student. So that is a good example. Now, casual comparative research. In this kind of research, we study the effects of variables that have already occurred or are difficult to manipulate experimentally. It is similar to the experimental research, but the difference is that in the experimental research, we can manipulate the variable. The independent variable is something that we can do and manipulate with the group. But in this case, in the case of casual comparative, the independent variable is something that had happened. It is not something that I can apply. And here we have two examples, two questions. The first one says, do children with a history of abuse have lower levels of academic achievement than children with no history of abuse? And the other example, are women who attend a same-sex college more likely to attain leadership positions after graduating than women who attend co-ed colleges? In this case, the variables are abuse, working, or type of college. And the other variable, that would be the dependent variable, is the academic achievement and leadership. We can control the first variable, the independent variable. We can control if someone abused or the type of college. And that is a clear difference from the experimental research, because in that research we could apply a specific variable. And to finish with the types of research, we have correlational research. This type of research, it's pretty good to measure two or more variables and examine whether there are relationships among the variables. As simple as that. And here we have an example. This is a question. Is there a relationship between the number of hours that children watch television and their weight? The variable one will be television and the other variable will be white. We have to discover the relationship between both. And now the last book, that is Research Methods in Applied Linguistics by Brian Poldridge and Ag Paquete. You remember that I mentioned that statistics is one of the most important characteristics of quantitative research. Well, there are two types of statistics. We can see quantitative research that aims to investigate the characteristics of a population or opinions, perceptions, and attitudes of learners. That information, if we can measure it through average scores, percentage, a rank of something, we are talking about descriptive statistics. But if the researcher aims to examine a causal-like or linear relationship between two or more variables, we are talking about the inferential statistics. An example is aspects of language learning. For example, we have just discussed the types of research, but in this case I'm going to explain it again because these are the words of different authors. So, well, we have experimental research, survey research, correlational research, individual differences research. You remember that experimental research is that type of research in which we have a group, we have two groups, and we prove our hypothesis with one group to compare the differences between both. And the good thing about this research is that we have a very clear idea about our variables, the independent variable and the dependent variable. Well, then we have the survey research that is similar to the experimental research, but in this case, the survey research, it is focused on the instrument. That can be a survey, questionnaires, and other type of questions that can collect information about a group of people, and that can be measured. Then we have the correlational research, and that is the type of research that is similar to the experimental research, not the survey. It is the correlational, but this is just a little different. The difference here is that the independent variable can't be controlled because it's something that had happened, and we can manipulate something that had happened, and something that we didn't propose. And then we had individual differences research. We hadn't discussed that, but it is a type of research in which examines whether variable differs among different groups of learners. And the last type of quantitative discussed in this book is language testing and assessment research. This aims to measure the language of the learners the proficiency and the language skills. This is a good type of research for those who wants to measure the level and the skills in learning a language. And now it is the practical case, my study, my topic, my work. The topic of my interest is language anxiety. If you don't know this topic, language anxiety is a type of anxiety that a learner suffers when he or she have to produce in a foreign language, in a second language. It is normal to be nervous before a presentation, a participation, an exam, but if you suffer more than one or two symptoms, it is probably that you are suffering anxiety, language anxiety. And it is important to talk about this topic because it has been normalized, but nobody knows it, or not many people know this term. In my case, I would like to focus in fluency in the skill of speaking, in the speaking skill, because this is an extended topic. We can talk about learners, the classroom, the materials, the skills, but to have a better study, a better work, we have to define the topic we want to develop, and in my case it is fluency, because one of the most common problems in second language students is speaking. Usually learners says that they feel confident in writing or listening or maybe reading, but one of the most known difficulties is speaking. That is why it would be great to know if the implementation of speaking strategies can help fluency. And that is exactly the research question. Does the implementation of speaking strategies in high school classroom will help learners improve their fluency in English? As I already mentioned, we have to define. We have to focus in specific information. We can talk about all the information about our topic because that will be difficult, because it can be a very extended topic. In my case, I have to select the learners. Primary school, secondary school, high school, or university. In my case, I would like to work with high school learners. And there are many languages, but I would like to focus in English because that is a common language in schools that the students have to learn. And that is a question. Does implementation of speaking strategies in high school classroom will help learners improve their fluency in English, we have to prove, we have to think in a hypothesis. And in my case, the hypothesis is that that implementation will help learners. The hypothesis is the implementation of speaking strategies in high school classrooms will help learners improve their fluency in English. Now I have to prove my hypothesis through an instrument. And now that I already explained the types of research, the type of research that will help my study is the survey research, because I can use the specific instrument that other authors have used in their works. That is a specific questionnaire about the learning, just with some modifications to be more focused on speaking. The survey will give me the specific data I need to prove my hypothesis.